Shalom, friends. Nice to be with you again this week, in which the reading will be Behar and Bechukotai, the two final sections or portions of the scroll of Leviticus. And I would like to preface my remarks today with the idea that the scroll is divided up into the 52 weeks of the year. And yet, while many of us may not even question why does one section contain X number of verses and another more or less, how did this all come about? And I think we should know that because, as we have stressed repeatedly, that through the scroll, by virtue of listening to the reading of the scroll, we become imbued with the light force of God, so that we can make life a little more pleasant, a little less chaos in our lives. That the Kabbalist, for whom time, space, and motion, meaning last year, or 1,000 years hence, or 5,000 years hence, for these Kabbalists who divided up the sections of the scroll, because the original scroll, as if one had noticed, there is no dividing as we know it in our books that we use. And they created this division. And so therefore we should understand that there was a purpose in designating the amount of verses that would appear in this section or another section. It was not just an arbitrary figure that they chose, because sometimes we'll have, like in Deuteronomy, we'll have sections that only have 30 verses, and then in Numbers we'll go up to 174, 176. Like I've always, in humor, made the statement, give us a break, Kabbalists. I mean, why one week 174 and another week 30? Couldn't you kind of divide it evenly so that we don't have to linger on too long, as some feel, to the listening of the reading on Shabbat? But the answer is because they understood that in the year 2002 or 2050, this section that is going to be read is going to provide a very precise dimension appropriate for that period in time. This may have gone over your heads, but this is what the Kabbalists understood when we omit the limitations of time, space, and motion. And so I'd just like to bring to your attention this one time, because I usually like to refer to the particular sections that you will find of interest and the kind of energy you're tapping into. But in the first section, known as Behar, there are 57 verses. 57. Now, for the Kabbalist, 57 immediately designates the idea of sustenance, whether it be on the physical level, parnasah, or physical remuneration of money, or sustenance for the soul, and etc. So it becomes quite obvious that immediately, as we notice the amount of verses that will be included in this particular section, It tells us this is, for whatever reason, the Kabbalists understood the purpose of which is sustenance. Sustenance. Something, unfortunately, without which can't buy a loaf of bread, and you cannot avoid depression, which again is an indication of the lack, depressed, a lack of the life force within us, and therefore we feel depressed, we feel down, like a tire, when it loses its air, it goes down, car goes down. And so, in a very general way, you've come to listen to Behar for that purpose. And strangely enough, Bechukotai, the second section that is included in the reading, has 78 verses. Again, for the student of Kabbalah, we know that the number 78 represents 3 times the Tetragrammaton, or 3 times 26, the numerical value of that most powerful tool, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the most powerful tool, the Tetragrammaton, which is that physical yet non-physical lettering of the name of God, which means it's that dimension of connection between this physical universe, the physical me, and the dimension of the life force of God. And so we have 3 times, right, left and central columns, 3 times that dimension, the balance of this kind of energy that we have an opportunity to access into. So this is kind of just another piece of information for those of you who may never have heard the idea as to why these sections were divided by the Kabbalists as they are. It was not just got to divide up. You can't read the entire scroll in all of one Shabbat, and therefore they did what they did. No, there was a very precise thinking that went into this division. Now getting to the section itself, Behar, that first verse is really extraordinary, and I think it says it all. And whatever comes afterwards is there to teach us some of the other laws and principles of this universe. And it begins by saying that, and God said to Moses on the Mount Sinai, the following. And he goes on, and the section goes on to discuss the land of Israel. Well, many of us, or hopefully all of us, are perfectly aware that on Mount Sinai there were what we refer to in Kabbalah as the 10 utterances. For those who are unfamiliar with the true meaning of what happened at Revelation on Mount Sinai, you've heard it remarked as 10 commandments. So there were many commandments or utterances that were mentioned at the Temple Mount at Revelation. And now, the first verse, which says this is what God told Moses on Mount Sinai, it goes into a whole procedure, a whole processing concerning the land of Israel. But there are many other things. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. These were other aspects of the laws of the universe, in addition to the land of Israel. And I've always remarked, if there has ever been an area in this entire planet for which blood had been shed, there is no city like the city of Jerusalem. Strange. Why would there be such dissension, so many wars, so much blood shed over this little city, this walled city? Why? And so here, to understand what Revelation was about, and to understand what scroll is about, is in a capsule the idea that that city of Jerusalem is a central point in this planet by which we can tap into it in its closest proximity to the light force of God. But then one might say, but God is all over. But why was the Holy Temple built there? Again, the word holy, we know it means connections. But why at this point? And so in Kabbalah, we have come to grips with the idea of you have a immaterial God or the immaterial force of the light force of God now coming to be joined together with humans, trees, fish, and every other aspect in which the light force of God makes its presence felt, even in an inanimate, even in a rock. You ask a scientist today, what is the connection between a human being and a rock? Same atoms that are included in this physical body. So too, you'll find those same atoms in a rock. And so we've got this physical nature now, hopefully, being connected to the light force of God, to be imbued with that energy, with that force that can remove chaos, darkness, etc. And just as we have noted on many occasions, the importance of the 72 names, which act as a bridge between the mind of man and the physical reality. Because even the mind of man, I'm not talking about the physical brain, I'm talking about consciousness of man, which is immaterial. And we say mind over matter. Well, how do you bridge the mind with matter? This has been the problem that human civilization has faced since the very beginning of the creation of Adam and Eve. And consequently, while scientifically it's been proven that mind over matter, but that's your theoretical physics. But on a very practical level, we've all come to the realization, hey, we really can't bring the mind to bear on the physical reality. And that is not true. What had been lacking, what had not come to be prevalent amongst the critical mass that I say is required, is the idea that the 72 names can act as a bridge as a bridge, as that link between the immaterial reality of the light force of God and the physical reality as we know it, as we feel it, as we sense it. So too, this particular area known as Jerusalem, while inwardly all of the rulers throughout history whose empires were built ultimately found it necessary to drive its armies into the capture of this little city known as Jerusalem. Because while logically there would be no reason for the possession of a little city known as Jerusalem. Why would the Roman Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, the English Empire, the Greek Empire, the French Empire, the German Empire, all look to Jerusalem? Why? Holy city. What made it so holy? Oh, because the temple was there. So what? But the temple represented that physical representation that could be the link on a physical level as the 72 names. And that point in Jerusalem, that point, that section known as the Temple Mount, could act as that physical link between the immaterial of the light force of God and down into the very environment of the physical reality. And so when it states in the first verse that what God told Moses on Mount Sinai was, period, about the land of Israel. But there were so many things, was the question that I raised. Not only I raised it, but all of the Kabbalists raised that same question. And the answer is, because what is religion all about? What is a scroll all about? Why is Revelation so important? Because of only one reason. How we can connect to the light force of God. All of these instruments, whether it be religion, whether it be commandments, however you interpret the formation, the creation of a religion, the ultimate purpose, the ultimate goal is what? Ultimate goal. Even thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, was not the goal. Because those things exist when there is darkness in the world. But the ultimate goal was, with these restrictions, do not steal, do not kill, was to bring the consciousness of man in an acceptable position that he could or she could tap into the light force of God. Because that's the purpose of all of this. In the dissemination, in the dispersion of the light force of God into every aspect. And that was done through this holy city. Holy meaning it was an instrument, or as I like to refer to this holy aspect as WHOLLY. It was just the creation of a wholeness. Wholeness meaning what? Combining what? Combining the light force, the immaterial, non-physical aspect of the light force of God with the physical reality as we know it, and thereby create such an infusion of light that ultimately the darkness, the chaos that as we understand it, would be ultimately and completely removed from our midst. Shabbat shalom, everybody.